What up? And welcome in. Raptors Warriors are broadcasting game, a primetime matchup. Jaylen Justice back in the lineup. The return of Shane Ruffin to Golden State after being traded away this past summer to New Orleans. The Raptors have been struggling, losers of two straight at Memphis, at Seattle. It's a tough road trip that they're on. Game 5 of it. The Warriors, meanwhile, have been rolling. Our starting lineups, Shane Ruffin, as we mentioned back in. Of course, the big matchup, the primetime. Jaylen Justice taking on Javon Roll. Justice has been absolutely incredible for a Raptors team trying to stay above water this season. They've dealt with injuries to Shane Ruffin and to Terrence Clarke, the suspension to Ezekiel Morrow. And as we, on the Golden Era channel, we're going to transition to these games kind of serving a little bit as our podcast moving forward. So we'll dive into everything that's happening for both teams. Do we think there's a championship contention window as Javon Roll kicks off the scoring for the Raptors? We'll talk a little bit of Golden State. Toronto's got the ball, so let's start there. We mentioned a lot of struggling with that man right there, Ezekiel Morrow, missing 25 games. I think there's a reasonable case to be made as Jalen House buries a three that Toronto is one of the most dangerous teams in the NBA. Now, I talked about it when we did our top 10 contenders post. I really wanted to put Toronto in this list. There is a ton of talent with this group fully healthy. They just went and they got Zeke Naji. Naji's going to be a valuable addition for size. Keon Wallace is a starting center right now for Toronto. I don't know that that's a good enough center to win basketball games as Deontay Dixon gets free. You're just getting beat with a 6'9" Keon Wallace. Yes, Ezekiel Morrow is really good. Yes, the NBA is as positionless as it's been, but this is still a really challenging matchup if you are Toronto when you've got to go up against a Xavier Carter and the Boston Celtics. If you run into, which they very well could in the play-in game, a Robert Mack Charlotte Hornets-led squad as we get Deontay Dixon in transition for 2 points. All of that is very much on the table right now. So I think we've got to look at this Toronto team and saying adding size was necessary, but you look at the starting five. Jaylen Justice is arguably the best point guard in basketball. He's having maybe the second best season. There's the argument for Tyrese Olsen as we move to the second quarter there. Tyrese Olsen, Amari Swift, and Jaylen Justice, you saw his game or his numbers early on as we see Terrence Clarke go down here. That is what the team is deeming just a bruised rib. He shouldn't miss any time as Ezekiel Morrow immediately answers on the other end to cut the lead to 4. But you've got Shane Ruffin, you've got Terrence Clarke, you've got Ezekiel Morrow, you've got Jaylen Justice. Those 4. Looking across the Eastern Conference, I don't know that there's a better 1 through 4 right now in the conference. The Nets, with the addition of Sasha Kasparov, probably have a case for that, though you don't love them at their 3. You look at the number 2 team, the Celtics. I don't think that their top 4 is quite as dynamic as the Raptors' top 4. The Milwaukee Bucks are good, but that was one of the things we talked about with them in some of the bad things. Outside of their top 2 guys, you don't really know what you've got there as potentially dangerous pieces. So for Toronto, they're a sneaky team, and if they can turn things around now that they're fully healthy, they could really be a group that you look at and say, watch out, they can make a run. They get the wrong matchup. It's how I felt about Cleveland last season. Cleveland obviously ultimately ends up falling by way of a sweep to the Orlando Magic in the opening round as a 7 seed, but they were the same kind of vibe. You've got Jason Sanders. You've got Cameron Sullivan inside. There's a lot of talent there. And I think this Toronto group is even better, and they have an even better number 1. I think there's some reason to look at this group too. We've talked about the free agency in the coming seasons for Jaylen Justice. He has 1 year left on his deal. What does that look like? I think is going to be a very big question mark as we head to the second half. What is his desire to be with this group? But they've done everything they can to surround him with talent, going out and getting Terrence Clarke, going out and trading for Shane Ruffin. They've really mortgaged their future on the belief that so long as we've got Jaylen Justice in our lineup, we can win a championship. Ezekiel Morrow is a pending free agent this season. He's really good. He's an all-NBA caliber guy. He's not going to make it this season because he's missed 25 games. He probably wasn't making that this season anyway as he gets yammed on by Jonathan Kuminga. We'll get one more look at J.K. rising up over top of Morrow. Welcome back. He's been back for a couple of weeks here. Obviously, they're 6-4 in those 10 games since he's returned. But as long as that man right there has a basketball, Jaylen Justice's team is dangerous. Let's flip to Golden State. One of the things we talked about them in their top 10 contenders, they're deep. They're suddenly deep. That was my biggest concern with this group entering the season. What are they going to look like? Right? What happens if one of their three guys goes down? Well, right now, all three of them are playing out of their mind. Javon Roll's in the midst of a great one, as you just saw his stat line flash across, 13 points in this one. He's going toe-to-toe with Jaylen Justice. Deontay Dixon and Javon Roll are both top guys if they ever were, well, first off, full stop, they already are top guys, but their numbers would be of the Jaylen Justice, Amari Swift, and Brighton Reed, Jaylen Justice, Tyrese Alston categories if they had the full range of it. But you've got three guys scoring 20-plus points. No other team in the NBA is going to be able to go toe-to-toe with that. But the question was, how do they survive? We've seen a completely shifted rotation. They have committed to almost always having at least two of Deontay Dixon and Javon Roll and Jonathan Kuminga on the floor at one time. That's actually a really big shift away from what they've done. Okay, moving into this season, the way the Golden State Warriors have always operated was that Javon Roll and Jonathan Kuminga, they're glued to one another. They're going to play the first about 12 minutes of the game. They're going to play the first quarter together. They're going to come back in at the midway point of the third quarter, and then, the second quarter. They're going to play basically the complete reverse of that, play half of the third quarter and then almost the entirety as we get Jermaine Trimble up into it. That's not happening anymore. This team is now using both Dixon and Kuminga in various rotational patterns that allows them to always be on the floor with Javon Roll or together. That's new. We have not seen that. What the challenge is, and the reason for that introduction is a good find inside and suddenly this is a 7-point game late in the third, is that without that combination, Deontay Dixon alone was just getting murdered inside. This team did not have a lot of playmakers. He was really the only shooter. You were relying on a rookie in Jalen House to be the other contributor. That's not happening anymore. And if the Golden State Warriors are able to stay healthy, again, this was the caveat placed on almost all these teams, but if we can remove that caveat, because that's basically the deciding factor, they needed to get production in those non-number one guy minutes. And I think now they've been able to do that as we move into the fourth quarter. It's a 9-point game. Javon Roll has been cooking. We get Kuminga, drive, kick. Javon Roll burying a three. But looking at it, is Golden State a team that you would feel concerned about? At this point in the season, I am still taking Golden State over the field. Number one offense in the league. Number two defense in the league. That's the recipe. 46 wins, I think, as we entered this game. That's the number one. No, it wasn't. 44 wins, beg your pardon. That's the most in the league. They're running away with the top record. They're going to have home court where they entered this season with the best record at home. This team is nearly unbeatable at home. 5 losses coming into this game against Toronto. They are not going to be able to get run off their floor, very likely. You look at the teams that you think, hey, who could potentially beat them? It's quickly becoming Phoenix because of the way they've been playing, but the rest of the Western Conference, Portland is falling apart with Savion White out. Oklahoma City, do you really trust them with Tobias Bell? I don't think that I do. Who else would you even put on that list? Portland, no. I wouldn't put, like we just talked about, the Thunder, the Suns I would. The Jazz might be the best second option as we get a step-back 3 from Deontay Dixon. They pushed them to 7 games last season. The Spurs aren't going to do it. That's a team that's been up and down all season long. So across the Western Conference, the contenders just don't sit there quite like they do, in my opinion, in the Eastern Conference. As Javon Roll buries a 3 that pushes this to 16 with now 3 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. That's probably enough to put this away. That's not a great thing. This is a 3-time champion. They're going to be pushing for number 4, and they've got maybe the best roster they've had since that 76-win team, as they've really dove into this youth movement of Jalen House, Branko Todorovic, Jermaine Trimble coming in. This is a really good basketball team, and that's not going to be a surprise, but they just got a heck of a lot better as Deontay Dixon bullies former teammate Shane Ruffin to get 2. As we are now just over 2 to play Zeke Naji, who has not scored all afternoon, and then Shane Ruffin can't get the follow with the Russell Kingston board. So this is a really great team. That shouldn't be a surprise. On the other side, I think Toronto's got a real chance to make a push for it. A lot of it's going to depend on seeding. Toronto, I think, really needs to, as Jaylen Justice step backs for a dirty three over top of Javon Roll. They really need to rely on a good matchup for them to get rolling, as this one, unfortunately, has gotten away from us in the second half, particularly the fourth quarter. The Warriors now up to a 19-point lead, if we could do some math on this channel. That's now a 16-point game. So there's a chance. Now, this game, you also look at it and say, wow, Golden State ran away. How can you sit here and think Toronto? This game, I think, is influenced by Terrence Clark leaving in that opening frame. He does not have any points when he left. That bruised rib that he is not expected to miss time as Javon Roll goes in, draws the foul, and at this point, it's Javon Roll trying to surpass Jaylen Justice in the head-to-head. But that's going to wrap it up. It's going to be a huge win for the Golden State Warriors, that last bucket at the buzzer. Our final is 126-99. Javon Roll, 43 points, outdoes Jaylen Justice, who has 42. 18 from Ezekiel Morrow, 27 from Deontay Dixon. Tough night from Jonathan Kuminga, 3 of 12. The Warriors, though, 63-30 in the paint. Again, Terrence Clark left, not expected to miss time with that bruised rib. And then a scoreless Zeke Naji night, 0 points, 0 of 7. He just arrived in Toronto prior to this one after being dealt from the Nuggets to the Raptors. That's it. We're back. Utah and Washington is our next game up. We'll chat with you then. Thanks for tuning in.